This coming spring, the newly drafted Smoke Management Plan for prescribed pasture burning in the Kansas Flint Hills will be implemented on an introductory basis. A task force, including producer groups, K-State researchers and extension specialists and agents, municipality officials, and state and federal environmental regulators, teamed up to create this plan, the aim of which is to allow pasture burning to continue as an important management tool while preventing temporary spikes in air quality problems in larger cities due to concentrations of smoke. In examining this issue, the logical starting point is to have a look at why prescribed burning is essential to preserving our native grass resources. No better authority on that subject than longtime K-State rangeland scientist Clinton Owensby. Clinton, simply first of all, it's understood by those who are in the business of cattle production on the in the Flint Hills region on native grass, the value of prescribed burning. But to the layperson, it may not be so clear. So how would you summarize that value and explain just what burning means to the preservation of grass resources in Kansas?
Well, the reason that people burn, there are two of them that are primary in this situation. And number one is that it maintains a high quality prairie. I mean, there's concern you see about burning in prairie chickens. Well, the whole point of it is that without fire in this system, it will eventually revert to a forest type. And so it turns out that fairly frequent fire is necessary to maintain a quality tall grass prairie type in the Flint Hills.
But it's an economic consideration for the cattle producer as well.
Well, if you burn, you get more money, and it's as simple as that. The cattle that are steers that are on grass that's burned will gain an average of about 30 pounds more per animal, and that's if it's properly timed. You cannot just burn at any time. You must burn just about the beginning of growth of the warm season perennial grass dominants that are out there in order to get that benefit from burning, and that occurs primarily in the first half of the season, so it impacts both the intensive early stock systems as well as season-long stocking.
How important is it from the grass management and woody brush control perspective, as well as the economic perspective, for producers to burn in that concentrated time window, generally speaking for native grass, that is, in roughly the month of April, early May?
Well, it turns out that if you want to hurt somebody, you hurt them when they're at their lowest point, and that's the same thing with these woody species. When they have their lowest amount of food reserves, that material that they use to regrow following top kill, if you burn at that low point, then you get control. If you burn at an earlier date than that, then you're going to actually increase the number of stems of those woody species. So it's very critical that you burn in the late spring. And it turns out that the nice thing about that is that it's coincident with the maximum amount of gain that the cattle do. It's also coincident with the highest amount of productivity of the grass. So to get to woody plant control, high productivity of the grass, maximum amount of the warm season perennial grasses, and also to get really good gains on the cattle, you burn in the late spring.
You have done so much extensive research on prescribed burning methods in your years at Kansas State, and also have interacted with countless producers out there who prescribe burn as a matter of course. Your assessment on how well individual landowners carry out this practice and how efficiently?
They do really well. In fact, when we had meetings recently with producers from the Flint Hills region, one of the things that they were most concerned about was the timing that burning occurred, and they wanted to make sure that they were doing it right, and they had been doing it right because they'd listened, quite frankly, to the research work that we've done here at K-State. We've got, oh gee whiz, burning research work at K-State started in 1918 and has continued almost to this day with respect to production of livestock.
So part of the message here that you would stress is prescribed burning can be managed appropriately, and with this new smoke management plan in place, Can the objectives of that plan be met and still preserve the opportunity to preserve pasture land through burning?
Just to clarify, the number of times in the last 6 years or 7 years that we've had an incident where there was an exceedance of ozone levels in a metropolitan area has been three in the last 7 years. So it's not a common thing that occurs. The normal practice is for them to begin to burn in the southern Flint Hills regions earlier because that's when growth starts there, and it progresses up through the Flint Hills, and that then spreads it out over a larger time period. But when weather conditions get to the point that you cannot burn during that window down in the south, then they go later and later with their burn, and that then coincides with the same time that burning in the northern Flint Hills occurs. And that's when we have had exceedances in the ozone levels in those metropolitan areas. So there are a set of circumstances that occur with respect to when you burn that make a difference as to the impact of the smoke from the Flint Hills region.
If you were to then talk with a producer and they want to get your take on the plan, its implementation, that is the smoke management plan, and if it will coincide with the needs to manage grass with prescribed burning, what would you say?
Well, I'd say that as far as the smoke management plan is concerned, and the meetings that I had and the testimony I gave before the legislature, simply there was unanimous approval of the idea that the Flint Hills would burn. There were some issues with respect to how often and those things, but the rancher is not hamstrung by any of the new regulations. It's advisory in nature right now, and as long as the ranchers in the Flint Hills region are cognizant of the fact that they could cause a problem and then may change from one day to the next to burn in order to accommodate that, then I don't think there's going to be a difficult problem.
It really can be as simple as that, just adjusting slightly, you think, and take care of the business at hand.
I think so. I think that's the key to the issue is that there are certain times when we burn huge numbers of acres because that's the first day of the year that a fire can occur. And so what we basically need to do is in this instance, make sure that we burn when the opportunity arises and not wait for that time when everyone else is burning. I, quite frankly, am really, I suppose, hopeful that just a few changes in the way we do things will cause us to have a greater success in keeping regulation out of it. And that's what we really want to do. We don't want them telling us when or how or if we burn. What we'd like to do is to cooperate with them and make sure that burning occurs in the Flint Hills forever.
Rangeland scientist Clinton Owensby of Kansas State University on the pasture burning smoke management plan to be launched this spring in the Kansas Flint Hills region.